I don't care if you just got home from the gym. Go cook me something.
What did you say?
I said get in the kitchen and cook me some food, woman.
You can do your show afterwards, bitch.
I'm Michael Montero, and you're watching The Neutral Corner for the week of February 27th. Just kidding. We have a very healthy relationship. A lot of boxing to talk about, guys. It is the big week of the first big fight of the year, Frampton-Quigg, so we're all really excited about that. But I wanted to get to some news and notes before we get into the fight preview and the big fight review for all the fights this Saturday, so let's get it going. Okay, so I just wanted to hit on a few things real quick. Of course, big controversy this past week, Manny Pacquiao's comments about gay marriage and stuff like that. Now, I did a video on this topic. I don't want to go into it too much. For those of you who haven't seen it, please check it out. I posted it on my channel a few days ago. You know, the whole thing with Pacquiao's comments, I get why people are upset. I get why Nike dropped them. I just don't like some of the hypocrisy. And I'm not the only one who's talked about that and brought up parallels with other boxers who have said controversial things recently that haven't quite drawn the same outrage or the same media reaction. You know, but I don't want to get into too many details. I just want to reiterate on something, and that's Nike. Look, Nike has a history of sweatshops over in the eastern part of the world. They work in countries that have basically state-sponsored violence against homosexuals and women. And Manny Pacquiao has made anti-gay comments before. He's a very, very devout religious person. He's a politician in a very religious country where a lot of those feelings he expressed are kind of mainstream, and that's the audience he was talking to. So for Nike to react the way they did while turning a blind eye to a lot of other things, I just think that was very hypocritical. For some celebrities and public figures like Magic Johnson to say, oh, I'm never going to support Manny Pacquiao again, while he turned a blind eye to other comments made in the past from other fighters. That's the kind of stuff I just don't dig, but I'm going to leave that alone right here. Again, if you haven't seen my video on that subject, please check it out on my channel. A couple other things I wanted to hit on. Look, Floyd Mayweather back in the news again, at least in boxing circles, because he had another interview on Floyd Hype, which is a site that basically is just a soundboard for him. He goes on there every few weeks or so, if he hasn't really gotten any media buzz, and he just does an interview with them. And pretty much it's softball questions, and they let Floyd just talk some shit, and they get hits. It's basically clickbait. In a recent interview with Floyd Hype, that website, he said that Triple G would be easy work. And he said, look, he's nothing special, he's straight up or down, no disrespect, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of you guys out there on Twitter are commenting about this. I see a lot of the chat rooms on Google and on Facebook asking, oh man, could this thing be happening? Guys, it's not gonna happen, okay? There's not a chance in hell of that fight ever taking place. Quit making this guy famous. It's like when Kanye West says some dumb shit, or one of the Kardashians, or any of these reality TV show idiots. And you guys take these comments and you post it out there in social media. You're giving these people buzz. You're giving them web traffic. Stop making stupid people famous. When it comes to Pacquiao and Mayweather, I'm done with them. I think a lot of us in boxing are ready to just turn the page and move forward to the new generation. When these guys say something stupid or irrelevant to boxing, leave it alone. When it comes to Floyd talking anything about Golovkin, it's a dead issue. Fight ain't gonna happen. Quit speculating about it. Another, speaking of Triple G, just want to really quickly hint on the success behind him. Look, K2 Promotions announced today that they've already sold 8,000 tickets for his fight against Dominic Wade, which is actually 2 months from the day I'm filming this, on February 23rd. 16,000 tickets will sell out the Forum. Last year was the first time Gennady Golovkin fought at the Forum, and it was the first time Chocolatito, Roman Gonzalez, fought with Gennady kind of as this 1-2 punch. And the first time he was on HBO, they did over 12,000 then. And remember, both those guys were fighting overmatched opponents, right? Well, here we are, almost a year later. They've already sold 8,000 tickets for this fight. That was basically pre-sale. Tickets just went on sale this week. This is going to be a sellout. Now for Gennady, it's a mandatory fight, right? Toriano Johnson was the mandatory. He got hurt. He's getting surgery. The IBF pulled him out. They promoted Dominic Wade, so now he's fighting him. Another overmatched opponent. I do think he'll show a little more than Willie Monroe. I actually do think that, but it's still an overmatched opponent. When it comes to Gonzalez, though, he's facing an opponent that I think a lot of people are sleeping on in Arroyo. I think that it might be his toughest opponent to date, at least on HBO airspace. So, still, overmatched, unknown opponents. They've sold 8,000 tickets. How are they doing this? With Triple G, 2014 and 2015, there was a pattern. He fought once in New York, fought once in LA, fought once in Monaco. Now, I don't know if they'll go back to Monaco this year, but the New York and LA thing is going to be a constant. These guys at K2 with HBO have built a brand with Gennady Golovkin. There's a lot of people that hate on it because they're jealous, but look, they've fought in LA now 3 times. If you include this upcoming fight, they fought in Monaco 3 times. They fought in New York 5 times, 4 of those in Madison Square Garden. There's not once has Gennady Golovkin fought in Vegas or Atlantic City at some casino just to get a site fee. In fact, the last time he fought at a casino, he's only fought at 2 casinos in the United States, but the last time was at Foxwoods in Connecticut in June of 2013 against Matthew Macklin. So they're not going for the big money at the venue. They're fighting at regular venues that regular boxing fans can go to and buy a ticket. You look at some other fighters with some of the other promoters are doing with them, they're cashing out of casinos. They're going for the biggest site fee. They're taking fights to places they have no business being, okay? You take like 2 guys from LA and you have them fighting in Texas or something. There's all kinds of wacky stuff with the way these promoters put these fights on because they're going for the site fees, for the money. K2 Promotions has built something the way you're supposed to, the way they used to do it in old school terms in boxing. And that's why Golovkin's being successful right now. Yes, he's an exciting fighter to watch. Yes, he has a good personality, he's endearing to fans, but it's the way they've built him up. And I wish other promoters would learn from that. Golden Boy Promotions, to their credit, they're starting to do that in Los Angeles with a lot of their LA-based prospects here. And they're an LA-based company, so they really are building something here in Los Angeles. And they're reaching out to Jerry Jones down there in Texas, who owns the Dallas Cowboys and is a huge boxing guy and wants to put the eventual Canelo-Golovkin fight down there in that stadium. If that happens, that is a Mayweather-Pacquiao-esque fight that will not do the same business, but will put more butts in seats of real boxing fans, be a much, much better fight, and a much, much bigger, more memorable event if it's at a venue like that. We need more of that in boxing, guys. Last thing, news and notes. A lot of you heard about this buzzkill. Keith Thurman in a car accident injures his neck, had to withdraw. Well, not necessarily withdraw, but postpone the fight with Sean Porter. To date, right now as I'm filming this, Thurman hasn't come out publicly and said anything. Neither has PBC. They did a little press release saying, hey, he's been hurt. Lou DiBella, who was involved in that promotion, he was the mock promoter for that thing. He said something about it. But Keith Thurman himself and the PBC Twitter page have been paying attention. Nothing. The doctor's notes, the photos, nothing like that. Now, I don't say that to accuse anybody of anything, and there's a lot of people out there, including Kenny Porter, Sean's dad, who are very suspicious and actually talked about this possibly taking place, an injury coming up to postpone this bout. It wouldn't be the first time in boxing history it's happened, right? It happens all the time. I'm not accusing Thurman of anything, but when a fight of this magnitude is that close and you pull out because of an injury like this, produce something. Come on Twitter and just show a picture of yourself in a neck brace, or show bruises on your neck, or show your car. If you got in a car accident, obviously there's damage to your car. Show us something. Just give us something. It's the age of social media. It's real easy to do. Thinking back a few years to when I was ringside when Bernard Hopkins was body slammed by Chad Dawson, and he separated his shoulder, I believe. He did something to his shoulder. A lot of fans thought it was bullshit, that he was faking it. Bernard Hopkins released a hospital document to ESPN, to everybody. He was out there in the Twitter sphere. The actual hospital document showing his injury. B-Hop's old school, B-Hop's a real guy. And he was just like, here you go, it's legit. So I just kind of like to see that from Keith Thurman. And I think we will see something like that in the coming days. But buzzkill, because that was a fight that we were looking forward to. But there's some other fights that have been announced recently that we're excited for. So all in all, things are starting to heat up as we head into spring, and it's going to really get kicking off this Saturday night. But first, let's look at some previous action. Last Saturday in Germany, Felix Sturm became a titleist once again, this time at 168 pounds, with a majority decision win over Fedor Chudinov, the Russian who had beat him last May by split decision to win the WBA super middleweight title. Full disclosure, I haven't seen this fight. I've read a few articles about it from people that I trust, and a lot of people say it was a close, controversial decision, kind of could have went either way. That's pretty much who Felix Sturm is. Going back all the way, the guy just always seems to be involved in fights like that. Forgive me for sounding a little down on Felix Sturm. I'm not down on him. I'm just not somebody that is excited to see him fight, okay? This guy fought against Oscar De La Hoya in 2004 here in the USA. A lot of people feel he was robbed. I personally had him winning that fight. I thought it was a close fight. It was one of those close, could have went either way type of fights, but I thought Sturm won it. From that point on, he just went back to Germany, never came back, and has fought in these controlled type of situations, okay? And now, look, you look back at his career, at 160 pounds, he won the WBO title, lost it, the WBA title, lost it, won it back, defended it a bunch of times, ended up winning the IBF title. Then he moved up to 168 pounds, and now he's just won the WBA title. So you can say, without lying, that Felix Sturm is a 5-time world champion, quote unquote. But to me, that's just very symbolic of the age of boxing that we're in. You guys know that I'm very, very big on the difference between what I consider a real champion and a titleist, or title holder, or belt holder, whatever word you want to use. Felix Sturm has never been a champion. Never. He was never the middleweight champion. He's not the champion at super middleweight right now. There is no champion at super middleweight. He's a 5-time titleist. Big, big difference. There are other fighters we could point to in this era that have held 4 or 5 different titles. I mean, Adrian Broner comes to mind. I think he's had 4 different titles in 4 different weight classes. And the further down the weight scale you go, some of these weight classes, they're 3 or 4 pounds difference, right? You literally weigh, a lot of us, 5 pounds heavier or lighter depending on what time of the day it is. You might wake up in the morning and weigh 5 pounds lighter, right? Than you weigh at night after dinner. So, like, the titles, there's so many of them. There's so many people that are winning titles in all these different divisions. And just gotta be careful when you go around saying, this guy's a 5-time world champion, because that makes it sound like he's Hall of Fame worthy. He's not. He's just not. Felix Sturm is not a guy in my book that meets Hall of Fame criteria. Now, if he makes a big run at 168 pounds, ends up unifying some titles or establishing some lineage there, then absolutely, he's hitting that threshold. But at this point, he's just not, guys. When it comes to Chudinov, look, he went pro in 2009, but he doesn't have that many fights as a pro. Between 2010 and 2013, specifically between March of 2010 and May of 2013, he only had 1 fight in between that span. And that really just cut off his momentum as a prospect. Now, he's done well for himself. He did grab a title here. He has a couple of quality wins. But he's a 5'9", 28-year-old super middleweight. He's an undersized super middleweight who doesn't have KO power. So maybe he could work himself back into a title shot, but if I'm Chudinov's people, if it's possible for him to drop down to middleweight, I would try that. Super middleweight is so wide open though, I wouldn't rule it out that he eventually gets a rubber match against Sturm. The WBA, they love these trilogies that are meaningless. Think back to their heavyweight title with John Ruiz and Nikolai Valuev and Ruslan Shagayev, and how these guys were just tossing the title around, right? Just passing it back and forth like a cheap hooker. That's just how the WBA works. So we're probably going to see a rubber match here, but I have spent way too long talking about this fight. Let's get on to the upcoming fights. Staying in Germany and talking about guys who really don't need to fight each other anymore. Ola AfolabiMarco and Marco Huck are going at it for a fourth time this Saturday in Germany. And look, on paper, you know, you look at this and you think, why do these guys need to fight again? Marco Huck is 2-0-1 so far in the series. He's pretty much dominated the series, although there's been some good action. Marco Huck is 4 years younger. He has the better resume, the better amateur background. On paper, this is just going to be another win for Marco Huck. But here's the thing. Marco Huck has been in a lot of wars. He's been KO'd twice. And in fact, he's coming off a KO loss last August against Golovkin in one of the best fights of the year, if not the fight of the year in 2015. Ola AfolabiMarco never been KO'd, coming off a KO win in a fight that he was the underdog last November. So these two guys appear to be on two different trajectories. They have styles that work well together. They both go for it, you know, especially Huck. He can't really be in a bad fight. So there's going to be some good action here. But don't be surprised if Afolabi scores a late TKO win here. He probably realizes, you know, looking at the history of this series, he's going to have to do that to get the decision. And he's got that confidence, never been stopped. Huck has been stopped twice now, including in his last fight. That plays on a guy mentally. I'm going to go with Afolabi by late TKO in this one. Now, let's go to the big fight. The one everyone's excited about. The first really, really die-hard boxing fans fight of 2016. Carl Frampton going up against Scott Quigg to unify titles. Frampton won his IBF title, 122-pound title, against Kiko Martinez in 2014. It was actually their second fight, I believe. He had fought him once before, I think a year earlier, and stopped him. The second time around was a lot more competitive, but he won a clear decision to win his IBF belt. Scott Quigg won his WBA 122-pound title in 2013. These are two guys coming off of two different types of wins as well. They've been inactive, but if you look, Scott Quigg, both of these guys fought last July, but Quigg KO'd Kiko Martinez, who we're going to hear a lot about in this episode of the Neutral Corner. He KO'd Kiko Martinez last July. It was a spectacular knockout, a great performance. Frampton came to the United States, made his American debut. It looked shaky. It was actually dropped early against Alejandro Gonzalez Jr. in Texas, I want to say it was. It was his American debut, like I said, but his American TV debut. It looked like he had some nerves. And against Gonzalez, who was really an untested guy, a young guy who he was supposed to look good against, he had some problems early. Now, Frampton survived those knockdowns and came back to win the fight, but he was getting hit throughout that fight. He was getting tagged. Gonzalez is a tall, rangy guy. Doesn't fight exactly like Scott Quigg, different styles, but Scott Quigg is the taller, rangier fighter compared to Carl Frampton. Frampton's 5'5". They list Scott Quigg at 5'8", even if it's closer to 5'7". When you see these two together, Quigg is the taller guy, and I think that's going to give Carl Frampton some issues early. Also, again, the mentality, right? Momentum is a lot in boxing. You know, mentality, emotion, it plays such a vital part. And when you just look at the trajectory, Quigg seems to be the guy in the rise. What's interesting to me And Steve Kim and Gabe Montoya talked about this a little bit too in the Next Round, the podcast they do. Earlier this week, they were talking about this. It seems a lot of people in the UK are favoring Frampton, and I noticed that a lot of Americans are favoring Quigg. And I just wonder if part of that is because of that performance by Frampton on PBC last year, where he just looked kind of shaky. That was the last time American fans saw him, and they really got a good look at him that day. Most American fans haven't really got a really good look at Quigg. So, you know, you guys over there in the UK, of course, you've been following these guys a lot more. They've been on TV over there more. So you're more familiar with the fighters, but just going on the styles I saw from the little bit I've seen with these two guys and what they've done recently and some of the mental edge, I'm going to go with Quigg by the upset here. I think Frampton is the slight favorite. I'm going to go with Quigg to unify titles in this one. Now, coming over here to the USA, let's start on the East Coast. We have some East Coast and some West Coast flavor this weekend. Madison Square Garden in New York, Terence Crawford makes his 2016 debut against Hammer and Hank Lundy. And on the undercard, or in the co-feature, Felix Verdejo, he makes his ring return, his debut of 2016 as well. Real quick with Verdejo, he's fighting an opponent that literally has fought nobody. And he does possess some size issues. He's a tall, rangy guy. This guy's, his name is Silva. I believe he's out of Brazil. But he's fought absolutely nobody. And Top Rank is so confident that they already have a date scheduled, I think, for April in Puerto Rico. And then they have another date scheduled for sometime in the summer. They're already scheduling things out for the next 3-4 months for Verdejo. So they feel very, very confident. Now, we've seen crazier things happen, okay? But the odds in that fight are crazy, crazy wide. So I think it's pretty clear that this is going to be a real nice showcase fight for Verdejo. And he needs to take care of business and do it early. In the main event, Terence Crawford, Hammer and Hank Lundy. Okay, you know, Lundy has had some tough, controversial losses. I think he has kind of earned this bout. He deserves another high-profile fight. Look, he lost controversial fights to Ray Beltran, Thomas Delorme, Mauricio Herrera. That was a close fight before it ended on cuts. So he deserves this fight. But for Terence Crawford, it's hard not to be a little disappointed. It's weird because he's fighting quality fighters, but he's not fighting an elite level, top level guy. Since he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa in June of 2014. He's fought Beltran, Delorme, Thierry Jean, and now Hank Lundy. The combined record of those 4 fighters, 106 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws. That's pretty damn good. But again, I just can't help but feel a little like bummed out. You know what I'm saying? Just a little, it's kind of a buzzkill because after the 2014 that Crawford had, it looked like he was ready to take over and be like a new star. It's kind of fizzled, you know? And you can say the same thing about Felix Verdejo. He was like the hot prospect everyone was talking about. And then he had some injuries and it just kind of fizzled out. So hopefully this is a great kickoff start for both of these guys to a big kind of comeback year. Comeback might not be the best word because it's not like they lost last year or anything, but to get back some of that juice, some of that mojo they had going a year ago. I do think Crawford's in with a tough, tricky guy that's hard to look good against. You know, Hank Lundy has a way of sticking around in fights for the most part and being competitive. What I want to see from Crawford is him to dominate this fight and to stop Hank Lundy in decisive fashion. Because a fighter of Crawford's level, at least the guy that we think he is supposed to do that to Hank Lundy. I mentioned some of the guys that Lundy had some tough, close fights with. Herrera is a good fighter. He's the best of the bunch that Hank has fought and fought close with. But we don't put him at the level of a Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford should dominate, win every second of this fight, and stop Hank Lundy if he is who we think he is. And from the East Coast to the West Coast here in SoCal, Southern California, specifically in Anaheim, we have PBC. It's Leo Santa Cruz in the main event against the before-mentioned Kiko Martinez. He's putting his WBA featherweight title on the line. Also on this card, a rematch between Julio Ceja and Hugo Ruiz. These two fought in August, and it was a really, really good 5 rounds. 2 Mexican guys. Ceja was down in the 3rd, Ruiz was down in the 5th. Ultimately, Ceja came away with a TKO in the 5th round. And then Gerald Washington, undefeated American heavyweight, makes his ring return since a controversial draw with Amir Mansour last October. He's going up against a Colombian, Oscar Rivas, who I can't say anything about the guy except that he had a pretty good amateur career. He beat Kubrat Pulev in the 2008 Olympics, but didn't medal. And he's about the same size as Mansour. So let's start with the Washington fight. Gerald Washington is 6'6", and Oscar Rivas is 6 feet barely. So in terms of the size, one thing I've noticed with a lot of these super heavyweights, these really, really big guys, when they fight really short heavyweights, it's just ugly. You know, you go back to Vladimir Klitschko in his prime with some of the shorter guys he fought, it just got ugly. Lennox Lewis, he fought some shorter guys, you know, guys coming up from cruiserweight and stuff, and it got ugly in there. Some of these short, stout heavyweights of yesteryear, you know, guys, when we think of Mike Tyson and some of those guys, and Joe Frazier, those guys, you know, of that size now against these big super heavyweights, it just causes, you just got one guy punching down. And if the shorter fighter is in a defensive mindset and he's ducking down, it's almost like he's down at the other guy's waist and you're punching down at that. And as a 6'4" guy who's sparred short little dudes, you're a pain in the ass. You're an extreme pain in the ass when you do that. Look, with Washington, comparing it to his bout with Mansour, Mansour hits with a lot of power. Mansour has a really good chin. He's very experienced, and he comes in there to go for the kill, right? This Rivas guy, I haven't seen much of him. I don't know much about him, but from his record, from everything I can tell, from his amateur background, he's not a big power puncher. He's not going in there with a killer puncher's mentality like Mansour. So I think we're going to see Washington have some problems early with the guy who knows how to box, who fundamentally knows how to move about a ring, but eventually I think Washington should chop him down. If Washington doesn't get a stoppage here, that's kind of a moral loss for him, especially coming off that controversial draw with Mansour. He really needs to get a stoppage here. If this one goes through the cards, again, a win is a win, but to kind of get that bad taste out of some fans' mouth from that last performance, needs to go in there, up the ante. The one thing about Gerald, he's one punch at a time. And you can win fights that way, but you're not gonna win fans necessarily. So let's see what happens with that fight. But the Ceja-Ruiz rematch. Look, Julio Ceja is the, I would say, more polished of the two fighters, better resume, more proven to take a shot, even though he was put down in their first fight. I gotta go with Ceja again. I actually think this rematch is gonna go more rounds. I think both fighters will be more cautious. They kind of just went for the kill in that first fight. Generally speaking, in a rematch after a fight like that, the fighters are a little more cautious. I think this one will go more rounds, but I look for a 7th, 8th round knockout win for Ceja again. Let's talk about the main event. So, Kiko Martinez, I talked about him earlier in the show, how both Quigg and Frampton have beat him. Frampton's beat him twice. Quigg knocked him out, devastating knockout last year. Kiko's just not the same guy he once was, and he was never what I would call world-class, elite type of pound-for-pound type of fighter, but he was a quality, good pro. At this point in his career, he's pretty worn down and battle-worn. For Santa Cruz, who came off a good, quality, hard-earned victory against Abner Mares last summer, against a fighter that, you know, was also a Los Angeles area fighter. It was kind of the Battle of LA. They did a good crowd at the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles. Again, it's kind of a buzzkill because Leo hasn't fought since. Coming off that good performance, one of the better crowds, if not the best crowd that PBC has produced at an event to date. It was a very lively crowd, I was there. To not fight since that time. I can't remember, I just can't think of the month that fight was, but I want to say it was in the late summer last year. So it hasn't quite been a year, but it's been over half a year. To not fight at all. And then you come back and you fight Cruz-Martinez, and it's not even in the same venue. It's out in Anaheim. For those of you who aren't familiar with Los Angeles, Anaheim is in neighboring Orange County. We're in Los Angeles County. So it's not like Anaheim is just a suburb. Like you go up to the Valley, to Studio City, Sherman Oaks, that's like a direct suburb of Los Angeles. Anaheim is its own city. It's its own little place. You're gonna cross through a bunch of suburbs and then go through the suburbs of Anaheim and then you get to Anaheim. So it's almost in a different place, even though it's Metro Los Angeles, you know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, man. I guess it was just cheaper to put it on there. I get it, you know, at Staples Center, downtown Los Angeles, right now we're in basketball season, hockey season. So, you know, they've got games going on there pretty much every night. Okay, put it at StubHub. Put it at StubHub Center. It's warm enough out here in Los Angeles. Even if it cools down into the 50s at night, that's not too bad if you wear a long sleeve shirt. They could have put this whole event on at StubHub, where several of these fighters on the whole undercard have fought before, but they didn't. So I don't quite understand that. But, you know, just to tie this whole thing in, I talked earlier about what K2 Promotions is doing with Gennady Golovkin, and I'm not trying to sound like a Golovkin homer, or, you know, like some of you guys use the word like dick rider and stuff. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to explain that those guys at K2 have built such a smart business plan around Triple G, and it's paying off. You're seeing the result. They've done that literally within 2 years. 2 years, okay? They laid the groundwork three and a half years ago, but the last 2 years, it's really showed how it works. And you have somebody like Leo Santa Cruz, who's from the Los Angeles area. He just won the Battle of LA last year in downtown Los Angeles. And he doesn't fight for almost a year. And when he does, it's against a guy from Spain in Anaheim at a venue that isn't considered a hotbed of boxing here in Los Angeles. There are many venues throughout the Los Angeles area that boxing fans go to see fights, whether it be a club level fight like at Velasco Theater downtown, or, you know, the Forum, or Staples, as I mentioned before, StubHub. There's plenty of them. Out in Anaheim, this is just one of those things, man. Like, let me know what you guys think about this. Am I just talking shit here? Is my comparison ridiculous, or is what I'm saying making sense? Because I feel if other promoters did what K2 is doing with Golovkin, it's not like Golovkin's American. It's not like Golovkin speaks English as a first language. He struggles to speak English. He struggles in interviews. I've interviewed him several times. It's hard to interview him because English isn't his first language. But he tries to learn English, unlike people like Canelo Alvarez, who's starting to understand it, but is just uncomfortable speaking it. But they've marketed him in these markets so well. They've built up fan bases, and boxing fans, like, let's just take Los Angeles. Fans in Los Angeles know that Golovkin's gonna fight here once a year. Once a year you get to see Gennady Golovkin. Whether it's at the Forum or StubHub, or eventually it's gonna come to Staples, or maybe even Dodger Stadium. But they know, all right, once a year we get to see him. So guess what? He's fighting Dominic Wade. Nobody wants to see that fight. They wanted to see him fight one of the other titleists, or go up against Canelo. This is his mandatory, right? But because this is the one chance people here on the West Coast are gonna get to see him in person, It's gonna sell out. I know people that are coming from Portland and Seattle and flying down to see this fight. I know people coming from Arizona to see this fight. There's people driving down from Vegas to see this fight. It's not just LA people, it's the whole region. And it's the same thing last year when he fought at the Garden against David Lemieux. People from Connecticut, from Ohio, from Detroit. I know people from my hometown who went to that fight. I know people from LA who went to that fight. But I'm just saying, K2's just done such a good job with that. That fans in these regions know, okay, man, we got one chance this year to see him. And I don't know if Gennady will go to Monaco this year or not, but he's eventually going to return to Europe. He's going to have a fight somewhere in Europe. Maybe it'll be Germany or England, or, you know, if he gets Billy Joe Saunders, maybe that fight's in London. Fans in Europe are going to be buzzing. There's a lot of you guys who are going to fly, take the train, whatever, from wherever country you live to go see the fight, right? It creates buzz. So, all right, I just had to get on my soapbox and rant about that. I didn't even give my prediction. Leo Santa Cruz should knock out Kiko Martinez, but he probably won't. It'll probably go to the card. I do think there is a slight chance he could knock out Martinez with a body shot. Leo Santa Cruz has knocked out fighters to the body before. Kiko's been worn down a little bit. So maybe we'll see a body shot, liver shot type of knockout. It's probably going to the cards though, and it's almost going to be a shutout for Leo Santa Cruz.